So I often call people by their first name. In fact, I had asked Deb if I was pronouncing her last name right. And she told me clearly how to pronounce it, and I mispronounced it. I'm sorry. Crystal, I just know it's Crystal. And I said, Crystal, how do you pronounce your last name? And she said, like Madonna. Yeah, like Madonna. She said, well, why not golf? It's like, I don't understand. So it's Crystal Y Tennis. And I was really afraid I was going to say why not golf. Crystal is a true story. Crystal is duly licensed as a licensed professional counselor and a licensed clinical alcohol and drug counselor in the state of New Jersey. Crystal has worked in both outpatient and residential programs, as well as home therapy and crisis outreach. Crystal has worked with children and adults with a variety of challenges, including mental health, behavioral, developmental, and substance abuse issues. Over her career, she has provided direct clinical care and administrative oversight. Crystal is the Director of Care Management at Bergen's Promise, which is the CMO of Bergen County. Bergen's Promise currently provides care management services to individuals ages 5 to 21 with behavioral, mental health, developmental, and substance use challenges. In this presentation, Crystal will discuss the common mental health challenges in teens and how these are related to substance use. She will provide education on why a mental health diagnosis in teens increases the risk of developing a substance use problem and what parents can do proactively to prevent this from occurring in their teens. Crystal.
Hello, everyone.
Crystal, why not golf?
Let me ask the question, do I need the microphone or can everyone hear me?
What's that?
Because I don't like to use the microphone. Everyone can hear me, right? So I want to get an idea of who we have in the room first. Who in the room is a parent? Who in the room is a professional? Who is both? Okay, good. Because, you know, when I put these PowerPoints together, I really wanted to focus on parents, you know, in order to educate parents on kind of what to have their eye out for, what to take seriously. I think that the major flaw that we do at times is minimize issues, and then because we're minimizing them, they become a larger issue that then it's difficult for us to address, right? So these here, you just see, these are the most common psychiatric disorders in childhood. So we have anxiety disorders, ADHD, depression, and eating disorders. I'm not going to focus very much on eating disorders, but we do know, obviously, that eating disorders, they stem from control, right? Not feeling like you have control. So someone feels like I have control over my body and what it looks like. So obviously those feelings lead to feelings of depression, right? Feelings of anxiety, which then can also lead, you know, to a higher risk of developing a substance use disorder. Okay, so these are just some stats here. You know, the estimated rates for teens with substance use disorders ranges around 60 to 75%. Parents with children with these conditions really should be vigilant about the possibility of teens using drugs and alcohol. Why do we think that people with depression or anxiety or ADHD are at higher risk? Any thoughts?
They need to escape.
They're looking to escape? Okay. Escape from whatever's bothering them, right? Okay. Yep. Anything else?
Self-medicate.
Self-medicating, right? You know, I hear that a lot, you know, when I did my clinical practice. You know, marijuana is my medicine. It's what makes me feel better. You know, I'm not anxious when I'm smoking pot. You know, it calms me down. So we do hear that a lot. So I think that those are things to keep in mind. I mean, right here it says, you know, that unfortunately what it is a lot of self-medication. You know, so to the parents in the room, we're going to go over some common some mental health diagnoses and what the signs of them are. And if you see those signs, act on them. You know, act on them. Talk to your kids so that they know that you're listening and that you're being proactive and you're trying to help them. So maybe you talking to them will stop them from going towards this self-medication route. When the doctor, when he spoke a little bit about, you know, kind of this myth, right? Because we are here to kind of, you know, shatter the myths, right? That's the theme of the Drug and Alcohol Facts Week. There is this myth out there that kids are going to experiment, right? You know, they're going to do what they're going to do. And I think that that's very much normalized. I think that parents, you know, they think back, oh, I did it when I was a kid, you know. So it's very much normalized. But the statistics truly show that the earlier you start using, the more likely you are to develop a substance use dependency issue when you're an adult. And it really does go back to that developing brain, right? If our brain develops in our mid-20s, and I've heard sometimes even 30, you know, they kind of go up to that at times. So right now the truth is, and what they say is, if you can get a kid, if you can get a young adult to not use and not experiment, you know, until they're in their 20s and that brain is fully developed, the likelihood of them developing an addiction disorder is actually reduced significantly. So that's one thing that I just wanted to get out there that I think is a myth that's kind of out there. So depression, right? Why are our kids depressed? What do they have to be depressed about? What do our teens have to be depressed about? Social media, right? That's not something, you know, that I had to deal with when I was a kid. I didn't have all that social media, all that Facebook, right? People sending things out about me, the cyberbullying. Family issues, right? Families are different these days, right? It's tough, you know, economically, both parents have to work, right? So the kids, you know, might be on their own a little bit more. You know, they're dealing with their parents having marital problems. You know, they might be dealing with some type of abuse in the home, whether that's emotional or physical or even sexual. Absolutely.
Academic pressures, relationships.
Academic pressures. The pressures on students these days are ridiculous. Okay, my daughter's in 3rd grade. All right, and the homework she gets sometimes, I'm like, oh my God, you know, they really, unfortunately, do we have any teachers in the room? No? Okay. My vision and what I see is that teachers are teaching for people to pass tests, right? They're not looking at that creativity. They're looking to really, and it's because of the pressure on the school boards, right? They have to do good on the standardized test, but it's a lot of pressure on the kids. They don't get a chance to let their creativity out and just be kids. Their lives are so structured now. They can't just go out and play, right? It's not safe. Right? So we keep them so busy, we keep them in all these activities. And it's a lot of pressure, not only on the younger kids, but the teens, and then going to college. You know, there's so much pressure that really does lead to these depressive symptoms. Some common depressive symptoms, right? You know, lack of interest in pleasurable activities, right? So if a kid, you know, used to really be into sports, you know, and they were into football, and then all of a sudden, they just don't have that interest anymore, that's a sign. We want to look at that. You know, we don't want to just minimize that and say, oh, they just don't want to do it anymore. You want to have that conversation. It really is about starting that conversation that really is so important. And the stats here, you know, I mean, those that have a major depressive episode, right, is experiencing depression symptoms for at least 2 weeks, you know, straight. They're twice as likely to start using alcohol or illicit drugs compared to teens that don't have that. Depression, however, is pretty much on people's radar. You know, I mean, it's you know, antidepressants are one of the, you know, most prescribed, you know, prescription, and a lot of it is for youth. And I think that parents do get concerned when their kids are depressed, and I think that they generally do a good job talking about it to them. But I think we can do better. You know, I think we need to look at these signs. When are they withdrawing? Lack of social contact, right? You know, you don't really talk to people anymore. You're on the phone, you know, you're texting. I was at a meeting the other day, and it was a break, and everybody's just on their phones, you know? And some people are emailing each other, you know, so that social connection, you know, really helps develop adolescents and develop teens is going away, and it's causing our kids to experience these feelings of isolation and depression and helplessness. Anxiety, very much related to depression, right? The pressure, right? The stress. What is stressing our kids out? School is stressing them out, right? Their peers are stressing them out. What someone's posting about them on Instagram is stressing them out. What someone's doing, I don't do Snapchat, but what they're Snapchatting about, you know? And it's causing a lot of stress and anxiety, and a lot of social anxiety is also very common, again, because kids aren't put in real social situations as much anymore. They're not forced to deal with social situations. Much easier to sit behind a computer, you know, and write what you want to write, as opposed to really having that face-to-face communication that is very much needed for our social development. And we're missing that, unfortunately. So we need to act on that. And as parents, for your children, or as students, or as professionals, we need to address that when we see it becoming an issue. Friends, you know, the peer pressure, still there, still exists, you know. They want to make those social connections, you know, so they're going to maybe get led into directions that maybe they don't want to go into. You know, so it is important, as it always has been, for parents to be aware of who their friends are and what their friends are doing, as well as who their friends' parents are. Unfortunately, we talk about it in the Prevention Coalition all the time. There are parents that still think if they are in my house, in my basement, drinking alcohol, that's okay. That's not okay, and they can actually get arrested for that. You know, we want to stop normalizing all of this and acting like it's okay, because it's not okay. So we have up here, you know, most common mental health disorder, nearly affecting 1/3 of our teens. All right, but what I want to highlight in this is that unlike depression, anxiety is often seen as a less serious issue, right? You know, like my kid comes up to me and says, oh, I'm so worried about this. I'm like, calm down, you know, like come to work and have something to really worry about, right? But as parents and as professionals, I think what we need to do is validate that they're worried about something. Talk to them about what they're worried about. Don't minimize it, because if we minimize it, they're not going to come to us and talk to us about it. They're going to find other ways to cope with the situation, which unfortunately could very much turn into that self-medication and that substance use. So ADHD, right? Why do we think that our youth with ADHD are more likely to develop substance use disorders? What do you guys think? Their mind is racing, right? Difficulty focusing, distracted. Anything else? Right? They might already be taking medication. They might be on Adderall or Ritalin. You know, they might be taking those stimulants, which again is also, you know, as the doctor indicated, that's affecting their brain and their brain development. But the social piece again, you know, youth that have ADHD symptoms, you know, they're not in that cookie cutter, you know, what we want a student to be like. So they're different. They feel outcasted. They feel isolated. They will do anything to try to make friends, right? They want to make friends. So unfortunately, that might lead them down the wrong track. So these are just some triggers and some risks that really should be paid attention to for our youth when we see them struggling, whether it's diagnosed or not. If we see these symptoms, we need to act on them. We need to have these conversations and educate them and educate ourselves. So here, you know, that, you know, they're more likely to have a substance use disorder, as well as smoking cigarettes, you know, earlier than other youth. Over here, you know, 35% have used one or more substance. So there's obviously a connection there. So wellness, right? So who knows what this is? What is it?
The 8 Dimensions of Wellness from SAMHSA.
The 8 Dimensions of Wellness from SAMHSA, right? So this is something that we very much embrace at Bergen's Promise. We do have a behavioral health home component, and they very much embrace this. But I think it's very important to remember, you know, we might be focusing on these emotional experiences and emotional wellness and saying there's issues, but the connection between all of these is so important. You see, they all overlap, you know, and we want to look at all of the aspects of wellness. Is there something that we can do in someone's environment that is going to potentially improve their emotion? Someone talked about family life. You know, is it a family life situation in their environment that's causing that stress and causing that emotional, you know, distress? and that might lead to the substance use. You know, we have occupational here, you know, but educational, right? What's going on in the school? Are they not doing well in school? Are they struggling? You know, you really want to look at all of this, and I think what we've found utilizing this model is kids don't always want to talk about substance use, right? They don't want to talk about or be open to talking about, you know, what drugs they're using, what substances they're using. They don't want to talk about stopping, right? Stages of change, we got to meet them where they're at pre-contemplation, I get it. But what we've noticed is if we say, all right, we're not going to focus on the substance use, but what we're going to focus on is social, right? We're going to focus on your social life. What are your positive social interactions? What are you doing to promote that positive social energy in your life? And what has been found is that once they start to improve their social life and their social skills and becoming more comfortable, generally the emotional and the substance, they start to go down naturally, you know, and then at that point they will become more open to talking about it. So this is just a really important thing that I think everyone needs to be aware of, that it's not always just that one area of emotional. All of these are interacting with each other. Wraparound. Who knows what wraparound is? Other than Kathy. Anyone? All right, so at Bergen's Promise, I got to throw my plug in here. At Bergen's Promise, we follow the wraparound model of care. Okay? So this is pretty much what it looks like here. You know, we have the kid in the middle, all right? And then we wrap all of these supports around this youth and this family, okay? We build a team around them, and this team could involve formal support, so it usually does involve a clinician, you know, the clinical piece. It involves the school, their teacher. It involves, if there are substance use issues, it would obviously involve a substance use professional. But working as a team, we are able to, and we've seen it happen, where they're able to kind of develop their own, they identify their own strengths and the strengths in different team members to be able to pull from them as needed, right? So say we have a youth that, you know, you start seeing signs of depression, okay? And you have someone on your team, you know, that maybe you start with the pediatrician, you go to the pediatrician, you say, you know, there's some signs of depression, I don't know what's going on, you know, and then maybe it's going to get branched out and maybe you're going to get a clinician to work with them, right? But then you also want to be looking at what are the strengths? Are things going good in school, right? So if things are going good in school, getting the teacher on board, you know, really getting all of the people that support and care about this teen and this family together to again, teaming up to support teens, right? It's really about that teaming up. So I think when it comes to co-occurring, a lot of people always ask, is it the chicken or the egg first? Right? You know, does someone develop a mental health issue and then they go into a substance use issue? And that is what I focused on for the most part. But I also want to recognize that, you know, substance use can also obviously lead to depression, right? You know, when it comes to all of the dopamine and all the neurotransmitters, you obviously know more about that than me. But those levels are very much affected by the substances that we put in our body, in our brain, specifically in teens with that developing brain. All right? And then if you don't have the right chemicals in your brain and they're not balanced out, you're going to be much more likely to end up needing an antidepressant or needing some type of you know, anti-anxiety, you know, medication. So they are very much connected in that way. Any questions? I know you guys have your index cards. No? All right, well, that's pretty much all I had. But definitely if you have any questions, you know, jot them down on your index card, and we'll be looking at them later. Thank you.